Let's take a look at how we can use ng-repeat to iterate through a collection of names and do a few other things along the way here. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a UL, and inside of that UL we'll go ahead and do an li and add our ng-repeat. Now, as shown earlier, we can come up with whatever variable name we like, but I'm going to do name because it kind of makes sense here, and say for each name in our names, let's go ahead and write out the name that we found. And we're going to use our data binding expression syntax to do that. And that's really all there is to it. So what that will do is automatically iterate through this particular collection and just write out these string values. So let's go ahead and try this out. And you can see that it indeed works and we get what we'd expect. Now let's come up here and change this just a little bit and let's do something a little more realistic. Most of the time, we're going to be getting back objects from maybe an AJAX call or some other data source. And I might have something like a name property, and I'll just do a couple here, and let's just do maybe John. And then I might have, let's say, a city, and let's do Chandler. And then we can go ahead and end that object, and then I'll just cut and paste a couple of these here, and we'll change the names real quick. Okay, so now if we do this, each name actually represents the object, which is probably not what we want. So if we run this as is, let's see what we get. And you see that we actually get the actual data. And that's not exactly what we want. So instead, what I can do now is name would represent the person. So we might actually want to call this people because it's not names any longer. And we'll change this now to people, and we'll say for each person in people. Now, again, if I do person here, we're going to get the same type of behavior, and it'll just write out the actual object data. So what we can do, of course, is drill into this. And if I want to write out the person's name, we could say person.name. Let's go ahead and refresh that, and there we go. Now, of course, I could also come in, and we could either do it in the same statement, or I can write it separately and do a separate data binding expression, load that back up, and now you'll see that we get the name and we have the city. Now, you could also come in and put this in line if you'd like, and we could do something like that. Let me clean up this one over here to the right. And notice we get the same type of output. Now, normally, it's really a very subjective process whether or not you want to put two data binding expressions like I did earlier, or if you want to go this way. I tend to avoid the string concatenation, and so I'm pretty okay with just duplicating the brackets here. But I think it really just depends on what you'd like to do. So that would be our starter example of getting started with ng-repeat. And what's really nice about this is we could do an HTML table. We could really do whatever we want. So let's go ahead and convert this and do a table. And we'll have our rows that we want to repeat. All right, so every time we have a row, I would want to write out a new cell for maybe the person name. And then we'd probably have another cell for person.city. Now I won't style this and make it look nice, but this will get the job done. So now we're going to write out a table, and for every row we'll write out the name and the city next to each other. And we could even maybe add a row up top for our header information. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, and we'll just say that we have name and we have city. Okay, now I don't want to repeat this row, and I definitely don't want to repeat the table, of course. So we would want to put the ng-repeat on whatever tag that we actually want to repeat. So I want to do the row. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. We'll copy it right down here. And let's just add a little break here between. So now we'll write out our header row, and for each person we find up in the people collection, we'll now iterate through each of those and write out a new row for each person. Pretty simple, nice and straightforward. Let's go ahead and run that. And there we go. Now we have, you can see our table cells there are working, and then we also have the UL up top. So this provides a really easy way to work with a collection of data. Now, right now that collection is hard-coded, but as we move along, you'll see that we could get this from an AJAX call, it could be a WebSocket call, it could be all kinds of different data sources. But once we get the data, Angular makes it very, very easy to iterate through it using the ng repeat directive.